everyone out there. We're back again with James Braha with a continuing series on what was left from the last time, that is conjunctions. So James, hearty welcome to you once again. And so what conjunctions are we going to learn from you this time?
Well, it'll be more, the last time we went Sun, Moon, Mercury, Mars, I think. Now we've got there's not so many today, but it's Venus, Mars, and Jupiter.
Saturn, you mean?
And Saturn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it won't be Sun, Saturn, Moon, Saturn. We already did those.
Yeah, we've done so much. So yeah, we've covered quite a lot. And honestly, James, just to be on record, you've got very good reviews. When everybody says that you're one of the, I did write to you and tell you that somebody's written that one of the very practical astrologers after K.N. Rao, and it was really a very beautiful statement coming for such a, a senior astrologer. It was beautiful, a sentence. One of the best.
I appreciate hearing that. I really appreciate hearing that, because there's a lot of, anybody can get on YouTube and anybody can teach, but if they're not teaching the practical stuff, there's no point to it. If it's all, psychological and behavioral, and we can make it fit here and it has to be accurate. So to me, that's the real astrology. That's the astrology that my first teacher, Santanam, he was more of a scholar, really. But the other teacher, Padia, who is in Bombay still, he is very practical. He teaches only what works. I did have a reading with somebody some time ago, and it was a difficult chart, and he wasn't so happy because he didn't hear all good news. and I bent over backwards to tell him what I saw. He wanted the truth. I gave him the truth. And eventually he said, I don't mean to be disrespectful, and I know this is totally untraditional. Could you ask Padia what he thinks? I said, sure. So I emailed Padia, my mentor, and I said, Padia, please, I'm having trouble with this chart. I said, I didn't want to tell him the story, right? I said, I'm having trouble with this chart. What do you think? He said exactly what I saw, the same things. He said, this is good, but Saturn's hitting here. This is good, but this planet's fallen. So I said, okay, well, so I learned well from him. But I also want to say that it's really, I hope that your readers are appreciative that you have brought me here. I never contacted you, you contacted me, and I'm willing to teach anything I know, but people should be respectful in their comments, and I like a back and forth. I don't want you, I had an interview recently, and the person said, I'm not going to say anything, you're the great teacher. I said, stop that. I will teach what I know. I'll make mistakes like anybody, but there has to be some back and forth. It can't be me doing all the talking. And also your questions are going to bring it, as an astrologer and teacher, you have these ideas of what you want to teach, but the students, they have their own questions. I can't know those without you. So when you have questions, please ask them.
Will do. Thank you so much for that, James. Thank you so very much for that. So now when you said that you would also like to add a beautiful section to it, which is about Sun, Uranus, Sun, Neptune, Sun, Pluto. So you also do check these planets out along with
You see, I was a Western astrologer for 3-4 years before I went to India. That's why when I went to India, I learned so fast. I learned very quickly because I already knew what the planets were. I already knew what houses were. Now I just had to see how the system differs and which houses differ, some of the houses, but it made it very simple. The amount of information that would be lost in a reading from me without Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto is intense. It's not, I don't need them as much for the natal chart. Of course I need them, but if I didn't have Uranus and Pluto, Neptune is a little different. Neptune is so nebulous, you never know when the transits will make something happen and when it won't, because it's very nebulous.
Okay.
But when I'm doing a horoscope, I do the natal chart, I do the dashas and bhuktis, I do the Hindu transits, then I go to the Western transits and progressions. If I did not have Uranus and Pluto in particular, and Neptune, so much would be lost, particularly in the predictive side. If you want to rectify a horoscope, the best way to rectify it is when Uranus hits the ascendant, the degree of the ascendant, there will be big changes, or the 7th house cusp, there will be big changes. In the Western, we have the 4th house cusp and the 10th house cusp, which are called the nadir and the midheaven. And if Uranus hits one of those, you can say that the horoscope is correct. If things are happening, but Uranus is 1 or 2 degrees off, the birth time is off by 1 or 2 degrees.
So it's just the conjunction, or is it also the aspect will happen if the aspect happens?
It's everything. It's all the aspects. But I would never want to try to teach the Western aspects in the Hindu system. I wouldn't want to do that. Those are trines and sextiles and squares. Forget that. But conjunctions and oppositions, if you're using Neptune and Uranus and Pluto, they're going to work. Also, I didn't really look very much in the natal positions of those planets until the last maybe 5, 6 years, 8 years. I would notice that if Mercury was conjunct Uranus and a Mercury dasha occurred, it wouldn't be what you would expect. There would be some effects because it was near, opposite, or conjunct with Uranus or Pluto. It definitely makes a difference, but I don't want to mix the systems. But the Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto aspects, I'll talk a little bit about them, but that's after we finish the regular ones. But there's a lot of information. As time goes by, when you get tired of one system, you start to look at another. Eventually, everybody will be using those planets, but it's a question of how long it takes.
Okay. So over to you, James, for moving ahead with Venus or Jupiter, whichever one you want to take.
Venus. So the Venus-Mars aspect. The Venus-Mars aspect is just what you would think. The 2 love planets conjunct, the 2 planets of passion conjunct, makes a person passionate. Now, it makes them passionate physically or sexually, but it also makes them want a passionate life. They don't want a boring life. They want passion. They want intensity. Mars becomes very strong by being next to a benefic. So in the scriptures, it'll say, if Venus, Mars are conjunct in an angle, you have a leader. Now, not everybody with a Venus Mars will necessarily be a leader, but when you look at leaders, lots of them have Venus Mars. Gandhi, Bill Clinton, Adolf Hitler. Leaders, they are commanders, they have strong Mars. Mars is going to be strong one way or the other. But if Venus Mars is in an angle, you must tell the person to use their leadership ability. They will anyway. The trouble, the greatness of Venus Mars is that you're passionate and you can be assertive and aggressive. It's good for law. It's good for mechanical, technical. It strengthens Mars. The bad part is that Venus gets hurt by that Mars, okay? And the passions are so strong that the person cannot really, they have a very hard time telling the difference between being in love with someone versus just being very attracted to them. So a Venus-Mars person, when they're growing up, they're always in love with somebody. They're always in love with somebody. But usually they have no business being in love with that person. It's just a physical attraction. So you must tell the client, you've got to be careful, because otherwise what happens is they get involved with partners that have no commonality, no, the partner can be completely different, totally useless as a long-term partner. They don't know it though because they're in love. Is very important.
I've
So
seen
Mars.
this working, in Jeffrey Archer's chart, the very famous writer. Very, very. I was just thinking in my mind about Jeffrey Archer and working like crazy in his chart.
And does he have a Mars like that?
Mars Venus combination, yes.
Yeah, I have the Venus Mars. It caused all kinds of troubles in love matters, no question about it. But the Venus Mars in my chart is in the 4th house, which makes for some leadership, and that Venus Mars aspects the 10th house. So if Venus Mars conjunctions in the 1st or the 7th, look out when it comes to love matters, because Gandhi was so upset because his passions were so strong, and I believe he was with his wife or something when his father was dying, and he would never forgive himself because he was so attached. Anyway,
yeah.
But it does give leadership, and it gives a passionate life. But the love, they get involved with people they shouldn't get involved with. That's the long and short of it.
Okay.
Venus Jupiter. Now, we have a show, a TV show. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's called Happy Days. It's from 30 years ago. No, okay. Well, anyway, there's one character on the show who is just he's the life of the party. That's what Venus Jupiter is. When Venus and Jupiter are conjunct, that's what Venus Jupiter. It's the life of the party. And the person will be extremely talented in the arts. These are two great benefics. It doesn't matter if they're opposite or conjunct. The arts are going to be very strong, and it's going to be very good for religion, philosophy, meeting with gurus, and things like that.
But what if one of the planets are debilitated?
Well, you have to look at where they are. So if you have Jupiter, Venus in Virgo,
right,
it's going to be impossible to know how that's going to work, because they're benefics, and so they could be okay. But Jupiter could get very harmed by being next to a fallen planet.
Right.
Depends how close they are. It just depends. That's after 40 years, that's one of the hardest questions to answer. What happens if any planet, sun, moon, is next to Venus, but Venus is fallen? It might get good energy because it's with Venus, a benefic. It might get very harmed because it's next to a fallen planet. In those cases, I basically ask the client, I say, okay, this planet here is conjunct with Venus. This planet is ruling, let's say, your marriage house, and it's conjunct Venus. Venus is a benefic, it's artistic. It could give you beautiful partners and happy partners, or it could mean that your partners have big psychological problems because it's next to a fallen Venus. And I let them tell me. If I'm doing the chart of a 10-year-old, then I have to say, it could go this way or it could go that way.
Okay.
You have to be able to, I said this in another interview somewhere, there's so much information that you give a client that is valuable. You do not have to know everything. And if you don't know something, it's best to say, I really don't know. We'll know when it happens, or these are the possibilities. Tell them when you don't know, because you can't know everything. Right. Now, I want to say something also about the Venus-Mars, back to the Venus-Mars for a second, because when they're opposite, look out. Venus and Mars are opposite. The fighting in love matters will be very intense. Venus-Mars conjunction does not necessarily produce fighting. But Venus-Mars, if it's opposite, Venus-Mars is going to create fighting, and you're going to see a person that is very stubborn when they're in a fight, if they have the Venus-Mars.
Okay.
But so the Venus-Jupiter is basically the life of the party. They are the life of the party, and they love to be happy. Now, the trouble with Venus-Jupiter conjunct or opposite is drugs and alcohol, sex. Too much indulgence is possible. Too much laziness is possible. So if I see Venus, Jupiter in the chart, then I start to look, does the chart have some suffering somewhere? Does the chart have some problems somewhere? Because if it doesn't, the person may be lazy and they may not achieve so much in life because everything feels good. This feels great. Why do I have to exert any effort? Yeah.
Wow.
But Venus, Jupiter, but not Venus, Mars, Venus, Jupiter.
Jupiter, yes, yes.
And Venus, Jupiter will be good in dealing with spiritual gurus and teachers and universities, colleges, like that.
Okay.
Venus, Saturn, very, very sad aspect. So I know everybody out there who has seen Venus, Saturn even 2 or 3 times, they know the Venus, Saturn person has a hard time in love matters. They are unloved often. Not always, but often. But it's very important to explain where that came from. It always comes from one parent being cold. So the child's growing up and the mother's cold. So the child gets the feeling, she doesn't love me, I don't really deserve love, and it becomes comfortable to be unloved. Or the father doesn't, or the father is cold. Mm-hmm. It's possible that a parent could just plain be absent, just not there. But whatever it is, the child becomes comfortable with the idea of not being loved. So they approach love from a position of scarcity. They approach it from, I can't really get what I want. I can't really get what I want. Oh, there's a person who's beneath me. I'll go for them. Like that.
Okay, so they take whatever it comes their way because they think they don't deserve it.
Yeah, and they'll take whatever comes their way. And they'll be treated badly, and they'll accept it.
That's a sad.
Yeah, it's very sad, and for people that are always so, the friendship. Yeah, Venus and Saturn are friends. Doesn't help Venus when Venus is near Saturn. It doesn't help. So now the Venus-Saturn should be very good for Saturn. Okay? Mm-hmm. Saturn is next to a great benefic. But what I've come to find, and I'm really sad to say how long it took me to realize this, Saturn, when it's very well disposed, exalted, well aspected, it doesn't produce the benefits that other planets, when they're exalted or very well placed, it oftentimes, like if I'm doing 10 charts and 7 of them have exalted, if I have 10 charts where they all have, say, exalted Saturn, not in the 20th degree, the highest point of exaltation, but if Saturn is in 10 degrees Libra, 15 degrees Libra, you know, the textbooks will say, oh, this is fantastic. Saturn is exalted. It gives this, it gives this, it gives this. But in practice, it's okay. It's not terrible, but it doesn't give the benefits that other exalted and well-placed planets have. That's my own experience. If you find that exalted Saturn's fantastic and the client says, yes, I have fantastic experiences in that area, then that's fine. But it's taken me a long time to say, you know what? It doesn't produce what it should produce. And on the other side, a similar thing happens with Jupiter. And I'm sad to say how long it's taken me to acknowledge this. I will see fallen Jupiter in Capricorn, and I'll think, this is terrible, this is horrible, it's going to be awful. And it's not so bad. The fallen Jupiter's not as bad as other fallen planets. The exalted Saturn's not as great as most exalted planets. It's just, that's what I've seen.
It's a sad story, I could just say it's a sad story. I mean, you're exalted, you're best, and yet you're at your best, and yet you do not get that much of attention, or you are not given that kind of importance. As in, you're just in your rags and you're in a party, and yet you are called you know, the showstopper. That's not fair, I would just
Yeah,
say.
but wait a second though. What about all the people that have Jupiter in Capricorn and their problems are not severe? Look, if I see Mars in Cancer fallen, that house is usually devastated. If I see Venus in Virgo, that house, that planet is usually devastated. I have seen way too many times when Jupiter is in Capricorn, maybe they have some problem, but it's not like the problems that other fallen planets. That's my experience.
Yeah,
You
and
can,
they somehow managed to scrape out of it. I've always seen the worst of problems with a debilitated Jupiter. They somehow managed to scrape out of it. Somehow.
somehow, yeah, yeah. Meryl Streep has fallen Jupiter, I believe it's in the seventh house, the house of marriage. And I think it's in like the fourth or fifth degree. I mean, it's right up there. Okay. Now she was married to or living with an actor named John Cazale who was getting famous, and he died. This was, you know, they were together, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or something, not a long time, and he died. And that's fallen Jupiter in the seventh house. But after that, she's been married for 30, 40 years, happily married. So that's what I mean. It's not as bad as Mars in Cancer, Venus.
And
So,
that for by Hollywood standards is a good thing. I mean, it's astonishing a thing.
astonishing.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Venus Saturn is a rough aspect. So the person, now it's also karmic. There's no doubt about it. Venus conjunct or opposite Saturn, that person is paying back karma in the love area. There's no other way to look at it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But they need to develop self-love and stop compromising and getting partners beneath them. Okay. Venus Rahu. So I've said this in many interviews, and I'm going to keep saying it. Rahu does not hurt planets the way Ketu does, not by a long shot. In fact, planets conjunct Rahu become stronger, and if the person has Venus conjunct Rahu, if they want to go toward mathematics, art, beauty, sweets, jewelry, clothing, beautiful, anything Venusian will be very easy because it's near Rahu. The Rahu dasha and Rahu's placement will be strong. Person comes to Rahu dasha when Rahu's conjunct a benefic, it's going to be strong. Even opposite, even if Venus is with Ketu and Rahu is running its dasha, or even natally, Rahu will benefit from that aspect. But the Venus Rahu, the one thing that it can do in love matters is Rahu represents insatiable cravings and desires for worldly power. Now, I have been working recently on this book, my very first book, Ancient Hindu Astrology for the Modern Western Astrologer.
Right.
I have been working on it because in Bulgaria, they want to do an edition of this in the Bulgarian language.
Right.
Now, I know I have to completely redo the book for the ebook version,
Right.
but I have to quickly get them this old version to them in Bulgaria. I went over the book, and I'm again embarrassed at what I didn't know in 1986. And the two things I really didn't know and had to figure out for myself was the retrogrades. So here I am blasting everybody who says that malefics are bad. And in my first book, I said, these are bad. They don't produce anything. But they're not malefics. They're passive. So I'm changing that. But the other thing is, boy, I took the scriptures. I took the textbook teachings about Rahu and Ketu, how bad they are, how this and that. They just say awful things about them. This is not good. Rahu in the horoscope represents insatiable cravings and desires for power. If Rahu aspects the ascendant, the looks are good. It won't help confidence, but it'll make the person good looking, powerful. If Rahu aspects the career house, the career becomes worldly and powerful. So Rahu is good for worldly cravings and power, worldly power. Okay, it's good for that. If it's badly placed in the second house or the eighth house, it's terrible because it just spoils family life. but you could still make a lot of money with Rahu in the second. In any case, Rahu is not going, so with Venus, the planet of love, next to Rahu, you could easily get a partner that's famous or powerful or wealthy, right? Because Rahu, on the positive side, is worldly power. Yeah. On the negative side, you could get a partner that is domineering, smothering, and intense. But I would not just predict that. I wouldn't do it, because it could be that the partner is very powerful and wealthy and famous, or it could be that they're smothering and pushy and domineering. It just, it's going to be one or the other. So, like that. Venus Ketu, no good. I have that. I have Venus Ketu Mars all within 3 degrees. Venus Ketu is great for Ketu. It's great for being able to hypnotize people. Ketu is film, photography, oil, gas, magic. So if Ketu is with Venus, the person is great at hypnosis. They can hypnotize people. They're great at magic, film, photography. It'll be wonderful. Venus, however, is going to have problems. And the way I explain Venus Ketu is being at the wrong place at the wrong time in love matters. The person you love is taken, or just, errors come up, mistakes come up that shouldn't have happened. It's not very good for Venus. Now, Venus Ketu, I just had someone the other day, had Venus Ketu, and they told me that people would ask me, what are you doing with that person? That person is not right for you. That's because Venus is near Ketu, so they're getting odd, strange, weird partners. Ordinary. Now, but what you have to watch out for is Venus is like Neptune. So you really got to watch out for drugs, alcohol, illusion, deception. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So Venus Ketu, you better strengthen Venus with a diamond, worship Lakshmi, keep Fridays as a special day, chant the Venus mantra, any of those things. And if the worst person wants to work with oil or gas, it's very good for, but really it's a great placement for film and photography, like that.
So one can also take up photography and then divert the energy in that direction.
Yes. But now Venus, Saturn, and Venus Ketu, and Venus Mars could all affect the thyroid. Venus Mars would be, the person is like this, the person is like this. That's the thyroid hyperactive. Venus Saturn, Venus Ketu is probably going to be slow, lethargic, gaining weight, and getting tired. So Venus is harmed by those things. Mars, Jupiter. Mars, Jupiter, my oldest brother was an actor, and a great actor. And Mars, Jupiter, I believe Laurence Olivier, I'm pretty sure that Laurence Olivier has this as well. Mars, Jupiter is a wonderful aspect for the stage. It's simply because Mars becomes very, very strong, and the person on stage, their presence becomes very powerful and very strong. Laurence Olivier was the greatest stage actor of the 20th century, not film. He was good in film, but he wasn't a great film actor. He was a great stage actor. And he was very big on that actors should lift weights. They should they should lift weights. They should keep themselves in shape. And what he loved to do was, so what he has is Jupiter opposite Mars. Olivia has Jupiter opposite Mars. He loved to do Coriolanus, where he would fall off the balcony and they would catch him. He loved to do those physical things, but it's a great placement for that.
I remember you also telling us for a chart, a combination, I don't remember which chart it was, when you said that this combination makes you very questioning, and it also makes you very skeptical about gurus.
Of course. My brother had Jupiter Mars conjunct within 1 or 2 degrees. He had No energy for mysticism, astrology, metaphysics, nothing, zero. Not everybody will be like that, but many will. It's because Jupiter, Mars is the most practical, skeptical, down-to-earth planet. Mars in the 5th house, the house of the mind, the person, they're not gullible. They're just not gullible. They have no gullible. So the Mars-Jupiter person doesn't do well with gurus and spiritual teachers, religion. They don't do well with lawyers and court cases and things like that. So if a person has Mars-Jupiter, you want to tell them, if you get into a lawsuit, settle it out of court, because the judge may be in a bad mood. The judge may simply not like you. I had a client, the judge didn't like him. Just didn't like him. That's Mars-Jupiter. The other thing about Mars-Jupiter is that Jupiter is luck. Mars becomes very lucky, but Jupiter gets hurt. My brother was born with yellow jaundice, with a liver. The liver was, it was okay, but that's the liver, gallbladder, spleen. It's not good for Jupiter to be with a malefic. But the Jupiter is luck. Occasionally, a person with Mars-Jupiter occasionally will have a very specifically unlucky experience, such as, when in the banks, they have safe deposit boxes where you keep valuables. Everybody thinks they're insured. They're not insured. But who's going to get into a bank vault? My brother has Mars-Jupiter. Some thieves, they went through the wall. They broke open the wall. They didn't take everybody's. They didn't get into every. Of course. It's just occasionally. It's not unlucky all the time, but occasionally there'll be things where you go, really? That happened? That's so unlucky. Occasionally. Not all the time. It's great for lawyers. It's great for performers and lawyers. Their ability to be aggressive and assertive. Technology, law, a lot of Mars-Jupiter and a lot of Venus. A lot of Mars-Jupiter and Mars-Venus people are lawyers, a good amount of them. The bloodstream and the muscles will be incredibly strong. Mars becomes Mars, yeah. Mars-Saturn is, everything is obvious, push, pull. When the person, so I believe if a person has Mars-Saturn conjunct or opposite, I believe that in past lifetimes they've been aggressive, assertive, pushy, offending people. In this lifetime, they can't, because when they want to be aggressive, something inside says, stop, wait, hold back. Ooh, I want to achieve this. I better wait. I better hold back. Push, pull, push, pull. So they lose opportunities. But what you have to remember about Mars-Saturn is it's one of the best aspects for building, meaning architecture, engineering, engineering, architecture. My son has Mars opposite Saturn. When he was little, he was always building things, and I said, maybe he's going to be an architect or an engineer or something like that. He wound up in computers, which is Mars.
That's also technical.
Mars-Saturn is very technical. Even though they pull on each other, they can work together as well.
Right.
The house that holds a Mars-Saturn conjunction, it's going to be hurt.
So what if it's a malefic house?
Well, if it's in the 3rd, 6th, 10th, or 11th, it can handle malefic energies. But the 3rd is younger siblings, and it will not do well for them. And the 11th is the eldest sibling and friends, and it won't do well for that. Everything else, it will. But when you say malefic house, what do you mean?
12th house. 12th house.
12th house, there would be problems with sexual enjoyment. That's how I would see it. The 12th house is debts and expenses. The 12th house is sexual enjoyment.
Traveling overseas.
What?
traveling overseas?
Well, I don't see that. I see the issue of travel and overseas. You have to be very specific. The 9th house is travel to foreign countries. It's life in foreign countries. The 12th house, the 7th house, if it's afflicted, tells you that the person will leave their home to live overseas. They'll do well overseas, but they will want to live overseas. The 12th house, I don't know what's going to happen to the 12th house as the world progresses. There is no longer any exotic, far-off land. When I went to India, it made sense. My moon is in the 12th house. It was 19, I made mistakes. I went in 82 and 84. Sometimes I say 83, 84. It was 82 and 84. When I went to India, my relatives and people said, where? You're going where? Oh my God. It's, today I'm going to India. Oh, say hi to so-and-so in India for me. The world has become small. But the 12th house, so I don't know. I don't know exactly as time goes by where there's a far off land. But if I see Jupiter going through the 12th house, I'll say to a person, you might want to go to an exotic country. But then I specify. That means Asia, South America, Egypt. I'm trying to find the places that are...
They want to go.
No, that are exotic, that are... If you're going to Europe, that's not the 12th house, that's the 9th house. Right?
And you know what, James, since you're talking about exotic, far-off places, probably in the years to come, my grandchildren might want to go to the moon or Venus because that is exotic for them.
That would be the 12th house. That would be the 12th house, I imagine. But that Mars-Saturn is going to hurt. It's going to hurt whatever house that it's in. It's going to hurt the opposite house. But it's, it also gives, I think that can also give the ability to solve puzzles or figure out how to make things work.
So it was a wonderful section on conjunctions, but we're going to continue on this further. We'll take it on to part 3. Till we meet you again, have a nice time and stay safe. Thank you, James, for this.
Thank you.